Jesus is King. Welcome back to the Meaning of Catholic. I'm Timothy Flanders, and I'm joined by my friend Gideon Lazar. Gideon, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me back on.
It's always a joy to talk with you. I remember with great fondness the series we did in the Pentateuch like 2 years ago, I think. It was just awesome to delve deep into the Torah with you. If you don't know Gideon Lazar, he's known as Byzantine Scotist, but he's also a Hebrew Catholic. And he's a real cool guy. I love working with him. And one of the great things he does is creation theology, which is certainly near and dear to my heart as a Michigander. I love Michigan is filled with conservative conservationists, if I'll call it that, because we have this beautiful state and we don't want it to be polluted and messed up, and we love to be out in the out of doors. But environmentalism as a movement has been co-opted by all sorts of weird Marxists and pagans and things like that. But I was really giddy, and I was really struck by it this year after my wife um, planted a garden 2 years ago, and she's been growing the garden in our backyard, vegetable garden, flower garden, and I just love the process of gardening. I help out a little bit here and there, carrying the heavy stuff or whatever, but it's really amazing how man is really created by God to be a gardener, literally.
Mhm.
So tell us about what's going on with creation theology these days with you.
Yeah, a few years ago, I helped to set up an organization called the St. Basil Institute for the study of the theology of creation. What we felt like is that if you look, for example, at the Prima Pars and the Summa, right, the whole third section of it is on God as creator. And it goes in from lots of different aspects, from metaphysics, from biblical theology, looking at Adam, both before and after the fall, looking at the angels before and after their fall. There's so much richness to the theology of creation. And then it also, as you were pointing out, has lots of practical applications and things like gardening, right? If you look at the social encyclicals of the church, pretty much every social encyclical the church has ever put out goes back to creation. And so creation serves as the theological foundation for everything else we believe. It's actually directly in the catechism that creation is this foundation to all the other mysteries of the faith. Um, and so what we had felt like, though, is despite all this, Ratzinger talks about in one of his books in the beginning, it's from the 1980s, he was discussing how creation had completely dropped out of theological discourse and out of seminary education. And it's gotten a bit better since that book, but really not a huge amount better. And what's happened instead is that there's all these concerns nowadays about how do we reconcile the faith with modern science. And that's an interesting question, but it's a little tiny question in this much larger picture of the theology of creation. So what we wanted to do with the St. Basil Institute was create a platform for people to have this much richer discussion on the theology of creation. Um, so I can briefly share here an online conference we're going to be doing in November that I think many people watching this will probably be interested in. This is Christ, the King of Creation, Catholic Social Teaching and the Theology of Creation. So this will be online on Saturday, November 22nd, the Saturday right before the Feast of Christ the King. And we're going to be looking at the importance of the theology of creation for Catholic social teaching. So in the morning, we're going to be going through the history of Catholic social teaching and its relationship to the theology of creation. So Pater Edmund Waldstein will be speaking on Pope Leo the 13th. Dr. Jennifer Bryson will be speaking on Pius the 11th and Pius the 12th. And Dr. Joy Nguyen will be speaking on St. John Paul II. Then in the afternoon, we're going to go to various topics in Catholic social teaching and the theology of creation. So Dr. Jared Goff will be discussing, um, matrimony and the sacrament of matrimony and its relationship to the theology of creation. Father Daniel Dozier will be discussing the theology of work and its relationship to creation. And then finally, I'll sort of be summing everything together and looking at how really I think the social encyclicals, even going all the way back to Leo the 13th, have predicted every single modern problem that we have ended up in. You can trace them all back. They were all predicted over a century ago.
Wow.
Uh, and what are they going to solve it, right? The theology of creation. That Leo the 13th, he roots pretty much all his analysis of the social order in the theology of marriage. And then when he's discussing marriage in Arcanum Divinae, he emphasizes the fact that man was created on the sixth day of creation, and that woman was taken from his side to be his wife. And he says that no one can doubt this. Um, and so I think this is then really the foundation, and every single pope since then, even all the way through to Pope Francis, has drawn us back to the theology of creation. And we're seeing Pope Leo do the same thing. He recently put out a votive mass to help us pray for the creation and its protection. And a lot of people sometimes they hear these things and they think, "Oh, this is liberal or something." But no, our the Catholic answer to these things is very different from the modern liberal answer. Our answer is that we have to recapture God as creator if we want to save the social order and if we want to save the creation. Um, and so, yeah, this conference, you can go to our website, stbasilinstitute.org, and go register for the conference. Up until is it August 31st? It's half off if you register early. So please go ahead and register now before the prices go up for it.
Sweet, that's very exciting. It sounds like a very penetrating analysis for the deepest social questions. And there's a lot of in American politics, there is uh, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have co-opted the church and split Catholic social teaching into two pieces, basically. Could you comment at all, just quickly? I know our main topic is all sorts of Jewish stuff, but could you comment at all on the reaction of uh, sort of the Republican Party co-opted Catholics in America, in my view, to this new mass of the care of creation? That was sort of like a controversial thing to some quarters. Any comments on Pope Leo's new mass setting?
Yeah, I read through it once and I'd like to read through it again and meditate on it more deeply, but I think it's a very beautiful votive mass that he's put out there. That right from the beginning, Adam was placed as this integral part of creation. And when we go through the creation narrative in Genesis, it's not as though God stops creation halfway through day six and then he creates man and woman. No, he creates man and woman as part of the creation. So there's never a time, right? This is sort of the modern myth is that you have the natural world and then man is above it, right? This is sort of the view of the scientific revolution you get from thinkers like Descartes and others, is that you have creation and then you have man as something separate from it. And then you have the opposite way around you get out of Darwinism, which is that man is simply a highly evolved part of the creation. And so man becomes reduced to the rest of creation. But the Catholic view avoids both of those because man is uniquely, right, man is still entirely part of the created order, but he's a unique part in having a rational immortal soul made in the image and likeness of God. And so man has an important role in ordering the rest of creation. Um, and so once man sins and he disorders the creation with himself. Now, the extent of that, I think, can be very debated. Actually, at our recent St. Basil Institute conference, we actually had a debate on this of whether the fall of man caused the death of animals. And we sort of came to the conclusion as, all right, this is an open, debated question. But what everyone on the panel ended up agreeing is that man's sin, at least to a certain extent, disorders the creation. And this is very important because a lot of what the modern environmentalists want to do on the left is they want to say we can help the creation, but we don't have to live in accord with the creation, right? You were talking about going out and actually gardening and living with the creation. Um, and this then requires a larger intent of man to live in line with the natural law. Versus what you see on the left is that they want to get rid of the rest of the natural law, but then still keep the creation, which is impossible. But then you have on the right, as you're very well pointing out, is that they see the left talks about the natural world, and so they assume this must be a left-wing cause. And so they assume, and essentially, the Republican Party in America, it's adopted that view of Descartes, Bacon, and others,
Yeah.
that man is above the creation, and so man can destroy the creation. You know, I think it's very interesting that you saw this Protestant creationist movement was very popular in, say, sort of the 70s through the early 2010s in America. It was very influential. But a lot of these same people, right, they didn't want to preserve the creation. They were happy with destroying it and exploiting it and so on. And so why would you care so much about whether God created the world in 6 days or in billions of years if you don't think the creation is important? And so we have to have this holistic view that doesn't sacrifice our beliefs simply when they're inconvenient for our political ideology.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And speaking of beliefs and political ideologies, let's talk about Jews, Judaism, and Israel. I've titled this the Jewish question, Quaestiones Disputatae, which is the scholastic term for all sorts of different debates that the scholastics and theologians debated. And this will actually be part 29 of our series, Jews, Judaism, and Israel. The last time we had a Bishop Khader, Palestinian bishop, on to talk about a lot of the modern stuff with Israel, the modern state of Israel. And Gideon and I have talked for years about all sorts of different aspects of Judaism, the old and the new, all sorts of aspects. But Gideon, you wanted to talk, I think so. Just recently, well, we talked with James Mosley. Gideon has a great article at his Substack comparing James Mosley to a Messianic Jewish rabbi. That was a great uh, analysis that you had. We had Analogia Entis, Mr. Will Tucker. He was on this series in part 19. And then we've talked a lot about Zionism recently. We had a little debate with Dr. Andrea Villeneuve and Matthew Sakonekis. So, where do you want to start, Gideon? I know that we set this up like 4 months ago or something. So,
Mhm.
what's been on your mind with Jewish question stuff?
Yeah, I first should probably preface that what I'm saying here on out for the rest of the podcast is simply my own views and is not at all affiliated with the views of the St. Basil Institute. Just to make that clear distinction, because we have lots of people who work with us in the Institute of all
Okay,
sorts of different views.
we'll chop that. This will be the private portion. So everything else will be private behind the paywall and everything else.
Yes.